Hi, guys. I could not be more thrilled to have today's guest on the show. She is someone who has spent her life at the forefront of leadership, advocacy, and one of the most important conversations of our time, which you may have heard me talk about before, women and power. Gloria Feldt is a visionary leader, expert, author, and co founder of Take the Lead Women, a movement dedicated to achieving gender parity in leadership across all sectors. Over the course of her career, she has led at the very highest levels, including serving as president and CEO of Planned Parenthood, which is amazing, while also helping shape national policy, expand access to care, and build movements that have impacted millions of lives. But what makes Gloria's work so powerful isn't just where she's been, it's what she continues to teach. That power isn't something that's given, it's something we recognize, claim, and use with intention. She's the author of multiple books, including the book Intentioning and the national bestseller No Excuses. She has spent decades helping women step into leadership, not just in title, but in influence. And I also want to be her when I grow up. Gloria, I'm so honored to have you here. Welcome to the show.
Carrie, thank you so much. I am so happy to be here.
Oh, I have been like just waiting and waiting and waiting to get to this podcast because I am so inspired by you and I am so impressed by all the work that you've done over your career and continue to do. You're like one of the busiest women I've ever met and busy in the best way, doing all these amazing things. So I have just been super excited to get to this conversation. And we will get into all the amazing things you're doing, but I always start the podcasts with all these amazing women the same way. Um, who were you growing up, and what was younger Gloria like?
Younger Gloria grew up in small Texas towns in a time and a place and a culture where girls and women were not given ambitions for careers. While my family valued education, and I always knew I would go to college at some point, it wasn't something that was just, you have to do this right now. I we grew up also. This is not unimportant to my whole entire story, which is that for most of my school years, I was we were the only Jewish family in town. So I grew up knowing what it feels like to be different, to be the oddball, to be, like I wanted nothing more than to be the all American girl. I wanted to be like all my friends. I wanted to do exactly what they did. I wanted to be the class favorite, so I did that. I wanted to be a cheerleader, so I did that. It was like I just wanted to belong.
Yeah.
And I kind of drank a little too much of the Kool-Aid. And I did what many girls in that era did, which was I married my high school sweetheart, moved away to another town a little bit bigger, Odessa, Texas, the land of Friday Night Lights. If anybody's, loves that series, I'm just going to tell you it's a real thing. My kids all graduated from Permian High School. We lived a block away from it. And I had three kids by the time I was 20. And
Wow.
then I sort of woke up. Then I woke up. And I just, because I had always been a kid who actually liked school and did well, I started to college when my youngest was 4 months old. And it took me 12 years to finish, which again,
Well, it doesn't surprise me. All those kids, they
yeah,
take some time.
it takes some time. And the thing is, it's these things that seem like they are not good things often can turn out to be the best thing that can happen to you. And for me, having to take that long to finish school, in no small part because there was not a senior level university in Odessa, Texas for a long time. The University of Texas eventually opened a branch so that I could finish my degree that in that last year of the 12 years. But it gave me sort of some breathing room to do some other things. I taught Head Start. I got involved in community service work. I got involved in some civil rights organizations, and I noticed a couple of important things. One was that people working together, even if they don't have formal power. Remember, this was still the segregated South, right?
Yeah.
People working together, even if they don't have any formal power, they can make anything happen. And I will tell you that that just little bit of observation helped me to build movements as I went on in, later in life and started my Planned Parenthood journey and all of that. The other thing I noticed, and this really was the epiphany that sent me on the path that you have met me on, is that I noticed that there were, the women were doing all of the frontline work and the men were getting all the leadership positions and all the credit. And I'm like, no, wait a minute. If there are civil rights, excuse me, if there are civil rights, then women must have them too. And that then applied to me in a way viscerally that it had never really occurred to me before. And I realized I have two daughters. I mean, I have a son also, but I have these two daughters. I want to make sure they can achieve whatever they want to do in their lives, as well as for me to be able to do it. And so that's when I started on the path of getting involved in different ways that I could help women to succeed in their lives, to build a career, to get to equality. I mean, there were a few other things that happened along the way. So one of them was when I went to buy a car and I couldn't get a car loan on my own signature, even though by that time I was earning as much as, or maybe a little more than my husband. And I could not get that car loan with my own signature. And I will tell you, that kind of ticks you off,
I
when
bet it did. I'd be pissed too.
Yeah,
I mean,
right.
and it's such a young, impressionable age. You're sitting there at 20 as a mother of three. So that's already
Mhm.
not the norm. And maybe it was more norm back then, but now surely it isn't. And so it's such an impressionable age. Anything I'll say, let's just say under 30, you're learning still, you're growing, you're becoming who you're going to be. And then on top of that, you go in and you're like, I've got a real career, I'm making some money, and I can't get a loan. And for the listeners, I think for all of our women that are listening that are younger, this wasn't that long ago. And so I
That's
think
right.
that's one of the things that's really important is sometimes as we're growing up, we learn things and we may learn about the civil rights movement or we may learn about women's equality. But the reality is this was not that long ago. And so I think that's another reason why it's so important for women like you to share your stories because oh my gosh, like we don't want to repeat the past
Right.
in that way. And again, it's a reminder that this wasn't happening 300 years ago, ladies. This was happening not that long ago. How do you think that early chapter shaped the way you think about opportunity, power, possibility?
When I talk with younger women today, I realize that, first of all, I get really tired of telling the story I just told you.
Yeah, I bet.
I get really tired of telling that. It's like, really, do I have to tell the teen mom story over and over again? But what I find is important is to help people understand that it doesn't matter where you start. Just start from wherever you are. We all make mistakes in life. We all make choices that are not great choices, and we have to live with them. We have to, learn from them, and we cannot let that set us back. And while I felt very ashamed, frankly, that I didn't have a college degree, whereas so many people around me did. I just learned a few things. I mean, actually, I probably got more out of my college courses because I had been living in the real world and working in the real
Right,
world. And
right.
yeah, and so it's just, people so often feel like, well, if I did this thing and I made a bad choice and no, don't let it ruin your life. You just pick yourself up, brush yourself off, think about what you learned from it. And it doesn't matter where you start, just start. And you can start
Just
over again so many times in life.
yeah. Well, you've said something that really stood out to me in our conversations is that power unrecognized is power unused. So how did you come to understand this, and when did you first realize it in your own life?
Hmm. I think I think I could not have put it in those kinds of words early in my life, but from my work at Planned Parenthood, which was somewhat serendipitous. I didn't know anything when I had my first Planned Parenthood job. And this is the other lesson is like, you just learn it. You just learn what you need to do. You learn what you need to do because I had no idea. It truly was serendipitous that I was offered this position. And I was planning to be a high school social studies teacher. And I thought, well, this will be interesting. I'll do it for a few years and then I'll go back to what I had originally planned to do. And 30 years later, I retired as the president. So you just never know where life is going to take you if you just say yes. But the I have to get back to the question exactly. Tell me.
Power unrecognized is power unused. When did you first realize that?
Power unused is power useless, is I think the way I typically say it, which is that so it was though I had to grow on the job of the world of Planned Parenthood, and when I first started, it was at the moment in time when federal funding was flowing to all of the Great Society organizations, and it was, I didn't have to learn how to raise money for a while, but then I had to learn how to raise money because that didn't last that long, and I didn't know how to do political work because, there really wasn't anything to do when I first took over. And then after a while, I had to learn how to lobby, how to use political power, frankly. And so it was a gradual process of really truly learning on the job and being challenged in different kinds of ways as some of the issues became more controversial and there were more attacks on women's reproductive rights. And as one lesson of movement building is that as soon as you win, you start getting pushback. And so just expect it because there are going to be people who don't like the change that comes about. And there certainly are a lot of people who don't like the change that came about when women actually had more authority over their own lives and their own bodies.
Right. Imagine that.
Yeah, imagine that. Just imagine that. So it was a process of learning very much on the job, and the culture of the reproductive rights and healthcare movement was a culture of defensiveness because they thought they had won. They thought they
Oh,
had won. They had all the court cases that made first contraception legal. That was in 1965. And then in 1973 was the Roe v. Wade decision, which legalized abortion. And there were funding sources, and there were all of these different things that literally made people think, okay, we're done. We've won. All we need to do is we just need to we just need to provide these services. We just need
right.
to.
And wow, and as we see now, so many years later, wow, we are not done. We are
We
not
are
done.
not done. We are so not done. So when I started out, I thought my job was, or actually I was explicitly told my job was to just go open clinics. And that was so fun. That was so fun. It was so fun to be able to start providing services where there had not been services.
Right.
That women could come in and they could get exams they could afford, and they could get all the health care that they needed. And it was just that was just so much fun. And that's when I learned that I liked growing organizations, and that
Ah,
that was
well,
really, yeah, that was
I
so.
think what's interesting to me about that was like one of your favorite pieces is I often say this many times to so many people is like people get so wrapped around the axle about Planned Parenthood and what they do and do not do, and I remind them, I feel like I'm reminding people all the time. I'm like, they're giving people access to healthcare, women, young women, old women, medium women, in between women, access to care. Like, definitely in my 20s, I used Planned Parenthood. I wouldn't have had healthcare without before my career started. I wouldn't have had healthcare without it. I wouldn't have been able. And women are going to the doctor all the time to get checkups, and so
Right.
I think it's
Mhm.
like I think that's really interesting that that was part of your favorite thing because it is. allowing so many people access that didn't have it before. They probably are like singing your praises as you're coming. They're thinking, "Yay, we've been waiting for this. We need this out here."
It was true. You're true because I have found that all you have to do is the saying, if you build it, they will come. It is so true. And I've been all over the world too because we had an international division. And wherever we opened up an access to services, they came because what women want more than anything else besides their own health care. I mean, it's important to be able to get a pap smear and to be able to get, all of the things that you need to stay healthy. Planned Parenthood's health care is essentially well woman care to try to keep you healthy and enable you to have children when you want to have children and to be able to be the person who makes that decision about whether and when you have children.
Yeah.
But it's like everywhere in the world, that is what women want because they want to be able to take care of their children. They want to be
Yeah.
able to take care of the children they have. And particularly in parts of society where money is scarce and you see parents who really are struggling and they know that they want to be able to take good care of the children they have.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
that to me is, again, coming from being a teen mom
Yeah.
in these small West Texas towns and not having much money, I mean, I know that struggle.
Yeah.
And I will tell you, when the birth control pill came out, that was like miraculous. It was,
Hallelujah.
my goodness. I've been having a baby every other year. Oh, I don't have to do that anymore. You know
I
what?
don't
I
have to
don't
do
have to have
that.
any more unless I want to. And three was really a good number. That was fine. That was all I needed. So and then in answer to your question about how I came to really understand power as I now work with it and teach it to women, is that it gradually came to my awareness that being defensive does not ultimately win. That ultimately it's important for a movement to have its own agenda and to understand and assess where its power is, because you can't get anything done in the world without using power. So, interestingly enough, after I left Planned Parenthood, I I had a book agent who really encouraged me to write this particular book, No Excuses: 9 Ways Women Can Change How We Think About Power. I had begun to study why was it that women had been earning 57% of the college degrees for 2 decades at that time. Now it's 3 decades. That the business case was clear that companies with more women in their leadership were more profitable. That remains true.
Yeah.
So women had the education, they had the metrics that showed the value of their being in leadership. Women buy approximately 80% of the consumer goods and products that are sold. So we have the power of the purse if we choose to use it. We could be shaping every consumer product out there if we masked our strength, our power, and used it that way. So why was it then that when I started doing this research, women were at 18% of the top leadership positions across every single sector, even
Hmm.
though we were already half of the workforce and had been for a long time? So I looked at the usual things, and I don't know if you saw the recent McKinsey Lean In study that once again said women just have less ambition than men, and that's why they're not in leadership. And I'm like, you guys, that is not it. You got to do
You
better than
are
that.
you are missing it, Mackenzie. Come on
You're
now.
clearly,
Come on.
clearly missing something important. So I did my own research, and I drilled down into the existing research, but I also did focus groups, and I did focus groups with women at all different levels. And I was also teaching a class at Arizona State University at the time, that I had developed called Women, Power, and Leadership. And so I had the opportunity to do this research and talk with women at all levels of their careers, from the college age until executive women. And I found that all of them had this sort of ambivalent relationship with power. And I tried to figure out the why. And my assessment is and was that women have borne the brunt of the worst aspects of power. The
Mm,
narrative of history has been about wars and fighting and assuming that resources are scarce.
mm,
Well, women don't like that kind of power. And it's a good reason because who has borne the brunt of the really worst aspects of war and abuse and, all of these things? It's typically women and children, sadly enough. And so it's logical that women would say, well, I don't, power is a bad thing. And I'm trying to figure out, but you can't get anything done if you're not willing to use power in some way or another. Besides that, even then, now in particular, in our economy, this is an economy that depends on brains, not brawn.
mm-hmm.
So it's not about who's the physically strongest. It's about who's the most innovative and creative and will work the hardest and build relationships and all of those things. And those are things that women are great at.
Mm-hmm.
So I found that if I could help women shift how they were defining power in their own minds
Mm-hmm.
from that oppressive idea of power over them to
Mm.
a generative, creative, innovative idea of the power to make your life better, make your kids' life better, make your business good, make your career go where you want it to go, all of those kinds of things that they would say, it was like masks would fall off of their faces. And they would say, well, yeah, I want that. Of course I want that kind of power.
Right.
And then we could go from there. And I would also say that there's not a finite pie of any of the things that really matter anymore. There's no finite pie of human intelligence. There's no finite pie of innovation. There's no finite pie of empathy and love and caring. So don't assume that resources are scarce. You can make more pies.
Yeah. What do you think? Do you think there's something specific that holds women back from recognizing their own power in the first place? I mean, obviously, you've just kind of described why women have a complicated relationship with power in the first place, but is there something that's holding them back from just even recognizing it in themselves?
I believe that it is simply the fact that it's culturally learned. And we all grow up in the same culture, whether we're male, female, or whatever. And we grow up in the same culture. And so even when you begin to see that there is an injustice, you don't always recognize what you need to do about it. And women, because of those cultural learnings, women value themselves less than men. There is good data that has found that women ask for 20% less than men when they're negotiating their compensation. What's the pay gap? It's right about 20%. And so the worst aspect of that cultural conditioning and learning is what it does to our heads. And that's why I focus on mindset
Yeah.
way before I ever get to skill set in leadership training.
Right. Well, I think you're so right because even when when you're talking about things like AI that are just taking over, whether that's in everybody's conversation or whether it's actually happening within their businesses, um, it's so interesting men's view on it versus women's. A lot of women are feeling like, oh, well, it's cheating. And it's like, well, it's not, it's about a concept. Same thing with asking for more money or like, being willing to put yourself out there and say like, no, I'm worth this more, this much more of whatever, whether it's compensation or coverage or salary. I think we're so, as women, typically, in a generalization here, we're so typically worried about what everybody else thinks, what everybody else, how that will make us look. how the other person is feeling. God forbid we ever put our needs first, right? It's like it's innate in us to be concerned with what is going on for everyone else, as opposed to looking inward and saying, well, wait a minute, what's going on with me? Like, what do I need? Right. And so I think it's just, you're right. It's just natural for women to do that. I'm really interested. Your journey from local leadership roles to becoming CEO of Planned Parenthood is incredible. But was there I mean, obviously you said I thought I was going to be a teacher. So was there a moment where you realized, like, you thought, okay, I'm going to take this role for a couple years and then I'll do whatever. Was there a moment where you realized the scale of impact you were stepping into?
Probably I didn't realize it as much as I now realize it looking
At
back
retirement?
and hearing what people say, how much of an impact it had on them. But really, there was a moment, or sort of a creeping realization, that because of the socialization I had had, when I was growing up, women, if they wanted to have careers, first of all, if you had to work, oh my God, that was a terrible thing, right?
How
That
horrible.
was, yeah, it's horrible, just horrible. But if you had to work, you could be a nurse, a teacher, or a secretary. And given that I had to drop typing in high school because I was that bad at it, and I didn't like the sight of blood, that meant teaching was going to be my career. And the good news is I actually liked teaching then, and I really like teaching now, which is why I enjoy what I'm doing now with Take the Lead so much. And but what I wouldn't have known if I hadn't been put into the position of CEO. I mean, it was really, the title was executive director, and it was a tiny little affiliate at the time. So I had the opportunity to start small. I had an opportunity
Gotcha.
to
You
start
you
small
you
and grow.
you were
Yeah,
lured into it.
yeah, I was kind of. And I discovered that I actually have what I call the CEO brain, in that I am willing to assume almost any level of responsibility in order to have the opportunity to create and to have a vision, and bring together the resources to make that vision happen, and to have some big ideas and make them really work for people, and open those clinics all over the place. And I would never have known that, but that's why it turned out to be such a good fit for me, and to have the good fortune of being able to start with a small affiliate and grow it into a medium-sized one. And then I moved to Arizona, where I took over a medium-sized affiliate and grew it to one of the largest in the country, and then went to the national organization. And it was a time, that particular situation was different from my affiliate experience by quite a lot.
Yeah.
It was it was a first of all, it was one of the worst times in the organization's history. I know it's bad now, but at that time people were literally getting murdered with some regularity. And that really made the whole organization turn inward and be very, an organization is an organism like a human being, and the psychology of feeling under siege all the time, just, it was very negative. And the access to services was stagnating or not growing, whereas it had been growing every year for a long time. People just felt that, and then people start turning on themselves instead of
Yeah.
keeping their eyes focused on who the real adversary is, because they
Right.
don't have much control over that. They start
Mm-hmm.
fighting with each other. So I honestly, the first time they tried to recruit me, I wouldn't even apply, because girl from the Southwest and from these small towns. I mean, who wanted to live in New York? What crazy people would want to live in New York? Ha! And the second time, my husband, the I would call him the love of my life husband. Not that there was anything wrong with my first husband. He was still a very nice man, and the father of my children. But that teenage marriages tend not to last forever, and so we
Right.
moved on. And when I went in Phoenix, I did meet the man who became the great love of my life, and he understood the organization because he had been on the board. So he knew the people, he knew
Oh,
the characters, he understood the whole movement. And there was a moment where he said, even though he was the New Yorker who had moved to Arizona and didn't want to go back to New York,
he said, shoot, I
he
see the
said,
writing on the wall
yeah,
here.
he said, you know, you really need to do this. You're the person who you can handle this. You can do this. You're somebody that's a known quantity, and the organization needs a known quantity right now,
Yeah.
and somebody who already has the trust of the affiliates and the people at the national level. So, so that I did apply and was offered the position, and thinking to myself once again, I'll do this a few years and then I'll go back to my nice easy life in Arizona. And here I am 30 years later, still in New York, although no longer working for Planned Parenthood, but I did fall in love with New York and discover that I love the city life a lot.
Yeah. And shout out to love of your life husband for being so supportive and recognizing the amazing power within you and the amazing characteristics in you that would allow you to do such a good job. I mean, that says a lot about who you're with, you're the person
Yes.
that you pick to be with, because that could be a daunting thing for a lot of partners where they go, ooh, like I know what the schedule is going to be like, and I know what that's going to look like. And it is wild when you talk about, people on the inside of an organization turning on themselves. It is such a it's wild because we're talking about women's healthcare.
Hmm.
You would think that it would be, I don't
Hmm.
know, boring. Thank you so much for being here. I hope you love this conversation as much as I did. And we're not done yet. This continues in part 2, so make sure you come back and join us there. That's a wrap on today's episode of Carrie, It's Not That Serious. If this conversation resonated, subscribe and share it with a whip, a woman in power in your life. You can find more conversations, more community, and all the fun INTS merch you love at itsnotthatserious.com. We're building something meaningful here, and I'm so glad you're a part of it. Until next time, remember, it's not that serious.